Hello, I'm Michael Chugani, and this is Straight Talk. With me today is Professor David Hui. Now, Professor David Hui, you are a well-known specialist dealing with infectious diseases. Before we continue, 恭喜發財 to you, first of all.
Yep, 恭喜發財. It's
not a very good start to the new year. Now, as I said, you are an expert in infectious disease with the Chinese University. The Chief Executive, Carrie Lam, has also asked you to be in a special committee with 3 other people to directly advise her on what to do with this new disease, right? This Wuhan disease. Now, before we even start with that, I want to ask you a question. This big question about whether we should wear a face mask or not. Now, I'm sitting here with you. Neither one of us is wearing a face mask. Under what conditions should you really wear one?
Well, you wear a face mask when you need to protect yourselves. So when you go to public areas, traveling by public transport, or going to crowded shopping malls, that would be the most dangerous place around this time of the year.
But not between you and me sitting here.
No, because you are healthy and I'm healthy, right?
So that's not a problem.
So yeah. Instead of in-house environment, when we are both healthy, there's no need.
Okay, now, Professor, I know yesterday, Monday, you were hurriedly called to Guangzhou to meet with officials there. Who did you meet and why were you called to go there?
Or actually, a few days ago, I received a call from my friend, Professor Lanshan Zhong. He's actually the national team head managing the 2019 novel coronavirus.
He was a hero during SARS, right?
Yeah, indeed he was. He's now also responsible for leading the team managing the 2019 novel coronavirus. And he has actually a huge amount of clinical data that he needs some assistance to analyze. For example, what are the risk factors that predict someone may do badly, going to intensive care, requiring intubation. And also the current data published in the top journals are only based on like 41 cases or a few cases. So he wants to look at a wider picture. So he's now accumulating more data from the different provinces. So I will have to go back at some stage.
So, he is now overseeing this whole fight against the new virus, the new Wuhan virus, and he invited you to Guangzhou to seek your help.
Oh, he's a very good friend of mine. We have known each other since 2003 when SARS broke out. In fact, it was him that taught us the early experience because he was managing atypical pneumonia already by the end of 2002 when there was unusual pneumonia in Guangdong, spreading to many patients and also to healthcare workers.
So what kind of advice did you give him?
No, I'm not in a position to advise him, but I'm just working with him and also his team. We want to find out a number of things. For example, what are the factors that predict poor outcome in patients that are admitted with this new infection, and also talk about the treatment alternatives. So it will be ongoing for a while.
You say ongoing for a while. This is what I'm going to ask you now. Hand on your heart, you're an expert in this. You're a specialist in infectious diseases. Do you think the central government, Mainland China, can stop the spread of this new virus?
Now, they shut down Wuhan a few days ago, and they also have forbidden the sale of wild animals from now on, hopefully for much longer. But
can they stop the spread?
No,
because, the numbers of deaths and those affected are more or less doubling every day.
Yeah. I mean, the main concern is that 5 million people already escaped from Wuhan before the city was shut down.
Right.
And these people are traveling around, maybe some in the mainland and some overseas. So within the incubation period, 14 days, some may develop symptoms and may spread the infection. So that is the major concern.
So you're saying that between now and perhaps in another week or so, it could get seriously worse?
Yeah, we have to see what happened within the 14 days from the time they shut down the city. These 5 million people, whether some of them will actually harbor the virus and develop the illness. And they may even pass on the infection to close relatives.
So I go back to the question, do you think China has the expertise to stop this?
Well, they do have a lot of expertise within the country. The only problem is this outbreak actually hit all of a sudden. So they are trying their best to control the outbreak. But, being a big country, so many provinces, people travel a lot, travel around the countries. And also this is the spring season.
But they weren't upfront in the beginning.
Well, they were quite...
They tried to play it down. They said it wouldn't spread from person to person. All that was not true.
Yeah, I think that was probably based on very early information. But as it turned out, they actually identified the virus quite early, on the 7th of January. And they actually notified the WHO on the 12th of January of the genomic sequence. And that actually has allowed the people in different countries to develop this rapid specific RT-PCR test to make the diagnosis. So from that point of view, they are doing okay. But in terms of the outbreak, the clinical outbreak, it is actually quite difficult.
How scared should we be here in Hong Kong?
At the moment, we are already stopping people traveling from Wuhan to Hong Kong. We have to be careful because some of the people from Wuhan escape from the city and they may be in other countries. And on the way back to China after the New Year holiday, some of them may go through Hong Kong. So we have to be very careful in the port and airports to make sure we can detect these people, isolate them early, and to try to prevent the infection to spread into the community.
But to be very honest, Professor, our government seems to have been reactive rather than proactive. You said that they stopped people coming in from Wuhan. That was asked by the people and politicians days before, and our chief executive, Carrie Lam, said no. And then a day later, suddenly, late at night, they said yes. It seems like they're not decisive. They don't know what to do. They're kind of being dragged along into doing things which at first they resist. So unlike Macau, which was so decisive in doing things, right?
I think there are a number of factors that make it difficult. A few days ago, WHO actually held 2 meetings to decide whether this would be a global public health emergency. And despite 2 meetings, they decided not to proceed in that direction. Now, had they declared this as global emergency, that would make it easier for different countries to implement a higher level of
I know that, but the thing is, I know the WHO did not say that this is a global emergency, but we are right there. We are in China, right? We are China. Surely, if Wuhan sealed itself off, we should have done more than what the WHO said we should do, right? Because we're right here. We're near the epicenter.
But very often, government usually pay attention to a recommendation made by the WHO. They need to have some basis to make some decision. And usually, if there is sustained human-to-human transmission, that would be easy. WHO certainly will call this global emergency much earlier.
Do you think we should stop all mainlanders coming to Hong Kong?
Now, that would be a difficult decision because as I went to Guangzhou yesterday, they had no community spread. And all the cases actually were also linked to Wuhan. In the absence of community spread in other provinces, it would not be easy to make this decision.
That's what the people say they want, though. Hong Kong people say stop them to come for a while.
Well, I think at the moment, if we target Hubei, that would be the main epicenter. But of course, these 5 million people who have escaped, they are the problematic.
They're traveling all over the world. They'll be coming through. They could be transiting through Hong Kong. They could be here.
So the only thing that we can do now is to try to pick them up at the airport or high-speed train station, isolate them early so that they don't spread the infection into the community. Okay,
let me ask you again, how scared should we be in Hong Kong? Okay, we stop people from Hubei coming in. How scared should we be? Should we be panicking?
I think we need to stay calm. I mean, compared to 2003.
That will always be a doctor's advice or a professor's advice, but I mean, people are panicking.
I know. I think don't worry too much, right? Of course, you need to be prepared, but don't let anxiety overwhelm you. Otherwise, you cannot do anything.
But how can you stop them from panicking when they cannot buy face masks? I couldn't buy a face mask, any face mask, from every store that I went to, sold out. I couldn't buy hand sanitizers. I couldn't buy alcohol wipes. People are panicking.
But yeah, some of the population would be probably overstocking for their own use. I think the government is trying to actually stock more from the other supplier.
Should people go to China at this time, mainland China from Hong Kong?
At the moment, certainly I would not recommend anyone going to Hubei.
Of course, yeah, but I mean the rest of mainland?
The rest of mainland, if you have some urgent assignment, that you have to travel, just make sure you maintain good personal hygiene, bring plenty of surgical masks.
You can buy surgical masks.
You can get some. I mean, if it is really important, then you have to go, but just maintain good personal hygiene.
I'll pick that up again so after the break. See you soon. Don't go away. Thanks for staying with us. This is Straight Talk. With me today is Professor David Hui. Professor, you're a well-known expert in infectious diseases. You handle SARS. You handle so many other diseases. Now, before the break, I was asking you, should people go to mainland China? And you said that unless there is urgent business, your advice is not to go, right?
No, certainly not going to Hubei.
Of course, that is understood, but elsewhere?
Other parts of China, I think it is still okay, provided you maintain good personal hygiene. Because even at this time, WHO hasn't imposed any travel restriction to other cities in the mainland of China. They only recommend people not to go to Hubei. There's no travel restriction at the moment. And also there is no evidence of sustained community spread in other provinces.
Okay, but then if you, for example, forget about mainland China or anywhere else in the world, you get on an aeroplane and there are, hundreds of people, passengers, they're all sneezing, they're coughing, you're sitting next to sitting so close to them. That, to me, would be frightening.
Well, up on the plane, after it has taken off, the air ventilation is actually very good. There is laminar flow, air coming from the ceiling to the ground, and actually filtering the air at about 16 times per hour. It's very clean air. But it is actually before taking off and after landing, then there will be some problem. After the pilot has switched off the engine and the aircon, that would be the time that the air would be a bit...
So while you're waiting on the plane, before it takes off, and once you arrive and the engines are switched off, those are the most dangerous times?
Exactly. So before landing and before takeoff, put on a surgical mask. And if the plane is very crowded, you also put on a surgical mask, right? Even
while you're flying?
Yeah, if the plane is really full, and also wash your hands regularly.
But then it's more important to remember that before you take off and after you land, you should put on a surgical mask.
Because that would be the more dangerous period.
and when you're actually flying.
Exactly, yeah. So I don't recommend checking the body temperature after landing because the pilot already switched off the ventilation system and the air actually the air changes would not be adequate.
But then we are checking temperatures for arrivals and you say you don't recommend that.
No, not up on the plane. We do it at the gate, and that will be.
Is that worthwhile? I mean, checking your temperature and then filling form. People lie with these forms, right?
No.
I mean, do you think that's really something worthwhile doing?
At the moment, the thermal scanner, they do play some role. We actually pick up a few patients who have fever, and in fact, if you look at Thailand and South Korea, they also picked up a few.
And I think in
passengers.
the States also, right?
Yeah,
they picked that up.
Exactly. Now, but we have to bear in mind. 2% of the patients with this new infection have no fever. Yeah. So this 2% may be missed if you just rely on the thermal scanner. So that's why the health questionnaire does play a role in trying to picking up whether they have symptoms, respiratory symptoms and other symptoms. But of course, health questionnaire is a subjective evaluation. People may not be honest.
well, most people won't be honest. If they've taken a plane, they want to come here, and then they say, yes, I have a fever, and they have to turn back. Of course, they'll say, no, I'm okay. I've never been to Wuhan. I mean, so...
So now there's a penalty attached.
That's
I think the
correct, yes.
government has to implement this strictly. If they do tell lies, they have to be punished.
Sent to jail or penalized. Now, is this worse than SARS?
It's a bit early to say.
What do you think?
Now, during 2003, there were more than 8,000 cases of SARS.
And 299 people died. 299 people died.
Yeah, and spreading to 29 countries and regions. At the moment, it is still evolving. So I think it's a bit early to judge at the moment. But certainly, the trend is getting close to SARS, I think.
It is getting close to SARS.
Yeah, the trend is a bit worrying. I mean, in terms of what we call reproduction number, so how many people you can infect when you've got active disease. For SARS, is about 1 transmit to 2 to 3. For the new infection, the WHO has estimated this to be somewhere between 1.4 to 2.5. So it is quite close.
Pretty close to SARS.
Quite close. So a bit worrying.
So do you think, like SARS lasted for quite a few months?
And then went away.
And then suddenly disappeared. Do you think this is going to like suddenly disappear as well?
It is possible because in hot weather...
Yeah, we're coming to the spring and summer, right?
In hot weather, the coronavirus would not be so active. So if we can get through this winter, temperature getting a bit warmer, getting up to near 30s or high 20s, then the infection may not be so active.
Well, it's turned cold the past few days. Is it going to make it worse then?
Well, now, at the moment, we have managed to isolate the 8 cases. There may be more to come, of course. And they have not spread the infection into the community. So hopefully, if we are careful enough, we can just identify the suspected case, isolate them early so that they don't spread the infection to the community.
You said that at the moment we've got numbers are, a couple of days ago we had 8. We just don't know how these numbers change, right, on a daily basis. Again, hand on your heart, is it going to get worse before it gets better?
I would not be surprised if we pick up a few more cases. Because
a few more? Or is it going to be widespread like SARS?
No, I don't think so. Because at the moment...
You sound very confident that you don't think it'll be as bad as SARS in terms of its spreading. Why would you say that?
Now, only because at the moment, the human-to-human transmission is still quite limited. You don't get big infection involving a lot of people as compared to SARS. Now, I can tell you in 2003, when we had the index case... You
handle SARS as well?
Yeah. So we had an index case that arrived to the hospital. At the time, we didn't know it was SARS, of course. That was the 4th of March, 2003. Now, within 2 weeks, 138 people got infected. And they were directly or indirectly related to this guy.
Yeah, super spreader. Right?
Yeah, super spreader. And there were also a lot of healthcare workers, after helping in the field for a few days, got infected. But at the moment, I spoke to my mainland colleagues. There are a number of small family clusters, but no major outbreak in the hospital setting. Yeah. So at the moment, I still think SARS is a lot worse at the moment.
You think SARS is a lot worse?
Yeah.
So you don't think this is going to become a pandemic that spreads across the whole world?
Now, of course, at the moment, I don't think so. But of course, you never know. Sometimes coronavirus can also undergo mutation. It can be in a milder way or more severe way. We just cannot predict. But hopefully, when the weather gets a bit warmer later on, it would not be so active.
What would you tell the people of Hong Kong? I mean, they are panicking. They cannot buy face masks. As I said, they cannot buy hand gel. I couldn't buy it. What would you tell them? I mean, people have gone through 7-8 months of protests, political protests, and then suddenly they're hit with this right at the start of the Lunar New Year. How do you think they should react to this? I mean, I think you've also said some time back that tear gas has also affected people a lot.
Yeah.
Right? Yes. You've said that as well. What advice do you give Hong Kong people?
For the time being, we just have to avoid mass gathering events. So that's why we recommend to cancel the marathon. when you have a lot
What
of
about
people.
going to restaurants? You know, restaurants are also got a lot of people. Movie theaters. What about, should we avoid going to see movies?
No, those social activities should continue. I mean,
Even going to the movies.
Yeah, I think so. Because, I mean, your seats are actually not so close together. You have your own seat. You are not overcrowded. Right?
What about MTR?
MTR,
almost
we have to be
overcrowded.
careful. It is overcrowded.
What
So,
do you do when you ride the MTR?
Well, you have to put on the surgical mask, bring some hand gel, and make sure you have enough masks. That's the problem. The supply is the problem. But make sure you have enough masks, because once you go from your home to your work through the public transport, the surface of the mask gets contaminated quickly, and you need to throw away the mask on arrival to your office.
So it's only a one-time use, right?
Oh, yeah. And then when you go out to another area, crowded areas, you need to change to another one. So make sure you do have plenty of stock. So I think the government has to help to try to...
Well, they're not. They said you've got to wait till after the Lunar New Year before they can even try to get stocks. Has our government been failing in its job? That's what the majority of people feel, that our government has failed. They've been too slow, they've been too reactive, they've not been proactive.
Well, they may be a bit slow, but, you know, at the moment, many countries are fighting for several things. Surgical masks, and even the reagents to develop this rapid test. Even in Hong Kong, we have a limited number, because every country is now fighting for it.
Sure.
So it's not just masks. Other items are also...
Well, you're in a committee with 3 other specialists advising directly to Carrie Lam, right? What is your advice to her?
Well, there were several items that I was responsible. Canceling the marathon, that's one thing.
Which has been done.
Yeah, and also the prolong the holiday, that's another item.
That's been done with the schools.
Yeah, and also we would recommend our citizens wearing masks in public areas and overcrowded areas.
But not restrict all mainlanders coming to Hong Kong.
That part was actually talked about, but we were mainly focusing on the people from Hubei, you know, at the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's been done as well. I've run out of time, but before I go, Gong Hei Fat Choi to you again, and Gong Hei Fat Choi to everybody. Let's hope the year turns out to be much better than it is now. See you next time. Good evening.